Okay, and we are live. Technical difficulties to start us off, but I'm Kat and I'm coordinator with Ontario Streams, and today I'm live out at headwaters of the Rouge, and we are joined by a very special guest, Mary Kate from the Toronto Zoo's Great Lakes program. So thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So Mary Kate program at the Toronto Zoo, program coordinator, and she runs a very similar program to what we've got, and we are all working together with the Lake Ontario Atlantic Salmon Restoration Program. And so Mary Kate is going to share how things run with the Toronto Zoo and how they are raising and releasing Atlantic salmon as part of this bigger program.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So we've been involved in the Lake Ontario Atlantic Salmon Restoration Program since about 2008, 2007. And ever since then, we've been raising salmon here at the zoo and also in classrooms, mostly around the Greater Toronto area and a little bit beyond that as well. So every year we release about 2,500 Atlantic salmon fry into sort of nearby watersheds where they're released back into the wild as part of this restoration program. So we usually keep about 300 or so Atlantic salmon eggs here at the zoo. I've got 2 tanks behind me. I've got kind of a bigger one up top and a smaller one down below where we keep all of our salmon and raise them up until it's time to release them.
What are the components of the hatchery behind you? So what's going on back there?
Yeah, so in behind me here, we've got the insulation that helps keep the tank cold, and it also helps keep it dark. So the salmon, when they're very young, they actually prefer dark conditions, and they're pretty sensitive to light. So it helps keep it dark, but also, glass is not a great insulator. So we keep the insulation on, helps keep the temperature stable so it's not fluctuating all over. And these tanks are very cold, so we usually keep them around 5 degrees. Right now, we're bringing the temperature up a little. It's at 8 degrees. We're getting them ready to be released next week, actually, into the river. So if I pull the insulation off, actually, this one here, it was decorated by a group of students. We've got a little bit of fish decorations on there. I don't know how well you can see those, but I always like when they decorate them. We try to keep them. Oh, actually, we've got a nice one here, too. Show you this one. This one's pretty cool.
Looks great. Right, you
Yeah.
gotta try and mimic that natural condition, right? Keeping them cold and in the dark since they'd be at the bottom of the rivers at this time.
Exactly. So right now, it's really hard to see them. They're in this tank behind me. We've got a little bit of gravel, a thin layer of gravel on the bottom, and they spend most of their time hanging out in that gravel. See if we can get a closer look here. So we got a couple near the front. We got some condensation on this glass because it is cold and it's warmer in here. Okay, we got a few swimming around in the corner. Let's see.
A little.
So we've got an air stone in there. It creates oxygen, air bubbles in there for our salmon. We've got a filter in the back that helps keep the water clean as well. Also creates oxygen in the water. As we move along, we've got our water pump. This is what pumps water out of the tank into our chiller, which is over here. This is our chiller, and the water goes in there. It gets cooled, and then it comes back into the tank. So it circulates that water around and keeps it cold. Also kind of acts as a filter as well because it's got a sponge on it. Got some salmon hanging out in the back corner there. See if we've got any more. They like to hang out near the front. Oh, there's some right there at the front. Uh-oh, you cut out a bit on me there.
A little bit of a cut cut out there. That's what happens when we're live on location. With all these technologies. So at this point, they're in that fry stage, right?
That is correct. So they have absorbed their yolk sac. They are technically fry now. We haven't started feeding them yet. They haven't quite shown enough activity to be ready for food, which is kind of good because we prefer that they start feeding in the wild. So we're releasing them on Wednesday. So once we put them into the river, they'll be ready to start looking for food.
And they'll get that natural prey instinct since they're so hungry. I know with our fish that we've been keeping, we have fresh brine shrimp. So again, we're trying to give them as natural food as possible rather than pellets, as we know it's not going to really motivate them to go catch their own food if they're relying on little pellets at the top.
Exactly. And they actually prefer when the food is like suspended in the water. So that really helps them if we can have food that suspends versus is up at the top. Like some of our fish that we have at home, pet fish, they're happy to go up at the top and feed, but our salmon prefer when it's actually suspended in the waterway. And I've got a model here. This is a salmon fry model. It's 3D printed, and this is a little bit bigger than our fish are right now. But this would be sort of typically what the fry would look like. Probably in another month or so, this is about how big they'll be.
And then they'll keep growing, right? Once they're out there eating the food that's available in the river, what looks like the next step there?
Yeah, so they'll keep growing, and probably in about a year and a half, or maybe up to 2 years, they'll enter the smolt stage, and they'll be about this big right here. So this is about what a smolt looks like, maybe a little bit bigger than this too, kind of depends, be about average size. And it's at this point that they'll start thinking about heading out to the lake and looking for bigger habitat and bigger food.
And then next up.
And then next up, we've got this big guy right here. So this is our adult Atlantic salmon. He doesn't even fit in the frame because he's really big. So this is about average size for an adult Atlantic salmon. They can get a little bit bigger than this, but yeah, this would be about average. And this is when they're adults. So they're out in the lake, feeding on other smaller fish, and just growing and getting bigger and getting ready to head back upstream to lay their eggs, probably when they're around 8 or 10 years old.
That is big. So hard to imagine. These little 1-inch guys are going to eventually get close to 3 feet long. And they'll be making that big journey back to those freshwater rivers where we release them. That'll become the stream that they are familiar with. They will spend that first couple of years of their life there before they head down to Lake Ontario. And what else do you usually do? I know we're in some different times. Usually there's a classroom component here, of course.
Yeah, that's right. So typically about this time of year, we'd be planning field trips with our students who are involved in this program as well, who have the classroom hatchery units. We would be getting ready to go with them on field trips to release the salmon. So they would all have the opportunity to actually release some of the salmon that they helped raise. We're going to be doing a virtual live stream rather than an in-person event on Wednesday, the 25th. But hopefully next year we'll be able to get back to those in-person events and get students out there and teachers and parents to helping to release these salmon and getting to be part of that process.
And now tomorrow is World Fish Migration Day, and salmon are one of the very few fish migrating species that we have here in Ontario. So that's why we really do want to bring them back. They're so special. But I know the Toronto Zoo does a lot of work outside of Atlantic salmon too. And in the Great Lakes program, there's other opportunities for classrooms and youth groups to get involved. Can you speak a little bit about those?
Yeah, sure. So we offer our Great Lakes program outreach program, which is, it's typically an in-class program where right now we're offering it virtually. So we do presentations to classrooms talking about all sorts of aquatic species. A fish we talk about a lot is the red-side dace, which, Ontario Streams does a lot of work with the red-side dace as well. But if we're talking about migratory fish, we also talk a lot about the American eel, which is another migratory species we have here in Ontario and in Canada. They lay their eggs in the ocean, and then the juveniles migrate up into freshwater ecosystems here in North America to grow and get bigger, and then they eventually will leave and go back to the ocean to spawn. So they're a really cool migratory species that we have around here that we like to talk about. And we also talk a little bit about lake sturgeon, which is another really cool migratory species found in Ontario. So we offer these presentations to school groups, but also naturalist clubs. We've also done some talks for different libraries. And we have lots and lots of resources on our website. So on the Toronto Zoo website, we have our Great Lakes program page, and we have brochures that are all about these aquatic species, but also we have some activity books about them that are pretty fun, and a video game all about red side dace as well. So you can find all of that on our website.
Wonderful. And you can also follow the Great Lakes program on Instagram and Twitter. So check them out there if you want to hear more about their programs. And I'd like to thank Mary Kate for joining us today and sharing so much information about Atlantic salmon and other locally species at risk that we have here. So I hope you have a great day.
Well, thanks for having me. It was great, and happy World Fish Migration Day.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.